The afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of Harrison's, casting warm light across the white tablecloths and polished wood. It was the kind of upscale restaurant where businessmen closed deals over expensive steaks and couples celebrated anniversaries in hushed, elegant tones. Elena Martinez moved between the tables with practiced grace, her blonde hair pulled back in a neat braid, the red skirt of her uniform swishing softly as she worked. She'd been a waitress here for 3 years now, and she knew the rhythm of the place, when to approach, when to give diners space, how to read the mood of a table before she even reached it. At 32, Elena had learned patience in ways most people never had to. Life had taught her to pay attention, to notice the small things, to communicate in ways that went beyond words. She approached table 12, where a man sat alone, dressed in a gray suit that spoke of boardrooms and important meetings. He had dark hair styled neatly, and the kind of presence that suggested he was used to being in charge. His attention was focused on some papers spread before him. A pen in his hand, his expression serious. "Good afternoon," Elena said warmly. "Welcome to Harrison's. Can I start you with something to drink?" The man looked up, and Elena noticed the tiredness in his eyes, the slight tension in his jaw. "Coffee, please. Black, and I'll need a few more minutes with the menu." "Of course. Take your time." Elena returned with the coffee, set it down carefully, and stepped back. The man, she'd heard the hostess call him, Mr. Brennan, nodded his thanks. Without looking up from his papers, she left him to his work. The lunch rush had just begun when the door opened and a small figure entered, holding tightly to the hand of an older woman. Elena noticed them immediately, a little girl, perhaps 5 years old, wearing a pink dress with a matching bow in her light blonde hair, and a grandmother with silver hair and kind eyes. The hostess seated them at table 14, just one over from the businessman. Elena smiled as she approached their table. "Good afternoon, ladies," she said. "Welcome to Harrison's." The grandmother smiled back warmly. "Thank you, dear. This is a special lunch for my granddaughter Sophie. It's her birthday." Elena looked at the little girl, who was gazing around the restaurant with wide, curious eyes. "Happy birthday, Sophie. How old are you today?" Sophie looked at her grandmother, then held up 5 fingers, beaming. 5 years old, Elena said with delight. "That's a wonderful age." The grandmother, Mrs. Patterson, as Elena would learn, ordered for both of them, and Elena noticed something in the way she communicated with Sophie. The little girl was watching her grandmother's face intently, and Mrs. Patterson made certain gestures along with her words, small movements of her hands that seemed intentional. Elena felt a flutter of recognition in her chest. She brought them water and breadsticks, and when she set down Sophie's cup, the little girl looked up at her. Then, with careful deliberation, Sophie brought her hand to her chin and moved it forward, the sign for "thank you" in American Sign Language. Elena's breath caught. Without thinking, she signed back, her hands forming the words with fluid ease. "You're welcome." "Happy birthday." Sophie's face lit up with astonished joy. She immediately began signing rapidly, her small hands moving with excited energy, and Elena found herself laughing and signing back, a conversation flowing between them that needed no sound. Mrs. Patterson's eyes filled with tears. "You know sign language," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea how rare that is." Sophie has been taking speech therapy, but she's profoundly deaf. "Most people don't know how to communicate with her." "My younger brother is deaf," Elena explained, still signing as she spoke so Sophie could follow. "I grew up with ASL. It's as natural to me as English." She crouched down to Sophie's level. "What would you like for your birthday lunch?" She signed. Sophie's response was enthusiastic and detailed. She wanted chicken fingers and French fries, and could she please have extra ketchup? And a chocolate milkshake if Grandma said it was okay? Elena signed back that she would make sure Sophie got everything she wanted, and the little girl clapped her hands with happiness. From the neighboring table, someone was watching. James Brennan had looked up from his papers when he'd heard the waitress laugh, a genuine, joyful sound that had broken through his concentration. He'd glanced over and seen something remarkable. The waitress was communicating with the little girl using sign language, her hands moving with graceful fluidity, her face animated and expressive. The child was responding with equal enthusiasm, and the grandmother was dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. James found himself transfixed. He'd been so absorbed in his work, in the stress of running Bennett Technologies, in the constant pressure of decisions and deadlines. But watching this interaction, this moment of pure connection and kindness, something stirred in his chest that he hadn't felt in a long time. It reminded him of his late wife, Caroline, who had volunteered with disabled children. She'd always said that kindness was the most important currency in life, more valuable than any amount of money. James had loved that about her. But in the 3 years since her death, he'd buried himself in work so deeply that he'd forgotten what it felt like to witness simple human goodness. Elena brought Sophie her meal, signing as she set down each item, and the little girl's delight was infectious. James noticed other diners glancing over, smiling at the scene. There was something about it that made the whole restaurant feel warmer somehow. He needed to know more. When Elena came to refill his coffee, James spoke. "Excuse me, miss. I couldn't help but notice you signing with the little girl. Where did you learn ASL?" Elena looked at him surprised. "My younger brother, Danny, is deaf. He's 28 now, but I grew up translating for him, advocating for him. It became second nature." "It's remarkable," James said. "The way you connected with her. You can see how much it means to both the child and her grandmother." Elena's expression softened. "Most of the world isn't built for people like Sophie and my brother. When they find someone who can communicate with them in their own language, it's like..." She paused, searching for words. "It's like being seen when you've been invisible. It matters." James nodded slowly. He found himself wanting to know more about this woman who carried such natural compassion. "I'm James Brennan," he said, extending his hand. "Elena Martinez," she replied, shaking it. "Can I get you anything else, Mr. Brennan?" "Actually, yes. Would you ask the kitchen to prepare their best dessert for the little girl? It's her birthday. And please add it to my bill." Elena's eyes widened. "That's very generous of you. It's the least I can do. Watching you with her reminded me of something important that I'd forgotten." "What's that?" James looked at Sophie, happily eating her chicken fingers and signing to her grandmother. "That kindness is the greatest gift we can give. My wife used to say that. I think I needed the reminder." Elena smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "Your wife sounds like she was a wise woman." She was. James felt the familiar ache of loss, but somehow it felt less sharp than usual. "She passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. I'm so sorry." Elena's sympathy was genuine, not the perfunctory condolences people often offered. "Loss like that changes everything, doesn't it?" "It does. You speak as if you know. My father died when I was 18. Sudden heart attack. One day he was there, the next he wasn't. It took years before the world felt solid again." They looked at each other. Two people who'd both learned that